Zipper pouches are fun and quite simple to make, but what if the pattern you are using doesn't call for the size that you want? You want to alter the size, but how big do you cut those box corners? I'm Jan Howell, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm all about sharing you DIY projects, tips and tricks on how to make those projects easier, less stressful, ways to upcycle things, and even save you some money. I've been getting a lot of comments and questions about how to alter the box zipper pouches that I show you how to make in my other tutorials and the pattern that I have. When you start to think about it, it's hard to wrap your head around the dimensions and how big, and it's really quite confusing. But if you use this formula that I'm going to show you, it's really simple to do. Make sure you watch the whole video because I'm going to be going over not only how big to cut those box corners, but several different bag and pouch making tips that maybe you haven't seen before. So pull up a chair, grab a notebook and a pen, and let's get started. When you want to alter the size of a bag, the first thing that you'll need to do is figure out how big you want the bag to be. I recommend getting a bag or a pouch that you've seen at the store or that you already own that is the dimensions that you like. If you're not sure how big you want the bag, take the items that you want to put in the bag, or think about or consider the items that you're going to be using it for and how big that would be. So I'm going to make a smaller bag. This is one of my bigger zipper pouches, bags, boxy pattern, and this is more of what I can imagine that I need just for a little quick overnight bag to put some of my facial products in. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to set them by each other and measure the width of what that would be. So I think a bag, the inner would be 5.5, and let's see how tall that I'd like to make that. And I'm going to be using this PDF chart and calculator that I will put the link in the description below that you can download and print for free. It is very helpful in jotting down these measurements and putting them in the formula so that you know exactly how big to cut those pattern pieces out. So for this bag, I have decided that I want it to be 5 inches high. So I'm going to write that down in the box here. I want it to be 2 inches deep. So I'm going to write that dimension there. And I want it to be 5.5 inches wide. To make this a little easier to understand, let's go over real quick how this boxed pouch is put together. So basically there's just two pieces of fabric. You'll have the width and the length of that square piece that you're going to sew together with a cutout box corner, they call it, to make this. Now don't get overwhelmed because it really is quite simple. I've had beginner sewers make these up and do such a fabulous job, and they comment how easy it is to do. I will put the link in the description below for that. But once you have these measurements, you're going to be able to make these zipper pouches any size. And you can use this formula to make just a regular bag that's not a box, but it does have a boxed bottom to this bag. See this purse? I don't have a box top, but I have a box bottom. But how do you know how big you want that? Stay with me. I'm going to go over that. Let's go back to our template here that's going to go over the formula. So we know the height, the width, and the depth that we want. Now I'm going to put in these numbers in this formula to let me know how big I want this panel to be. Because on your pattern, most likely it's going to give you a chart like this that will have your desired finished measurements and the size of the panel that you'll need. And the other items on there like the zipper, how long you want to, how need to make that, and we'll go over that in a second. But like I say, you're limited to that size unless you know how to cut that down and change the boxed size. So let's go back here. You're going to put in the width of your desired pouch, which is 5.5. You're going to add plus the seam allowance. Now to make this easier, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I tend to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance for most of my projects, but a 1/2 inch is good, especially if you're a beginner sewer. It gives you a little bit more, some wiggle room. So we're going to add that together, and that equals 11.5 inches. And that is how wide my panel is going to be. So I'm going to write down in this little box 11.5 inches. That's how wide I want it to be. Well, let's figure out how high to cut that panel. We're going to put the height in, the depth, which is this portion right here, how deep you want that to be. And that is 2 inches we decided upon, and the seam allowances times 2, and you will get this panel height. And then we have the 1/8. So I hope that's making sense so far. Now, when you decide to make the bag bigger, you're also going to have to make the zipper either bigger or smaller. So how do you know how big to cut that zipper? Simple. You're going to take the width, again 5.5 inches, the height 5 inches, plus 2 inches, maybe even 2.5 inches, just to give you that excess on the side when we're putting that zipper in. So that will be 12.5, or the 13 if you want to add a little bit more. So I'm going to cut my zipper. I'm simply going to cut my zipper, and I have a link where you can get zipper by the yard, which I love using because it comes with a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different colors of zipper pulls to go with. If you're using a purchased zipper that just comes singly and there is a set size, just get it one that's to the length, or you can always cut a zipper down. And I go over all those details in my other tutorials. So the box cut. What is the box cut? The box cut is that little corner that you cut out. I'm sure if you've been making pouches, you know what I mean when I say that. Box cut. There's a lot of different ways pattern designers will instruct you to do that depending on the method. So let me go over exactly how you know how to do that. If you can just learn this. It's the box cut measurement that's going to determine the depth of your bag. How deep that is will be determined by this cut that you make right here. So we've decided that we want the depth of our bag to be 2 inches. So all you do is cut that depth measurement in half. So the box cut would be 1 inch, 1 by 1. If I wanted it 3 inches, the box cut would be 1.5 inch. So do you get that? Doesn't matter what size, just cut it in half, and that is what you are going to make that box cut. Now, you always have to add the seam allowance in there somewhere. So I'm going to show you some different scenarios of how to do that. This is a bag that I am making, a zipper pouch. That is the dimensions of this that we've talked about here, the 5.5 by 5, whatever. I'm at the point where I need to mark my box corners. This is on the fold. If you were to make a regular bag like this, or a zipper pouch that doesn't have a box top, you're going to have just the bottom seam here. This is a really good tip, is to, when you're making that box corner, this little ruler comes in real handy. It's square. You can use just a regular ruler, or your other kind of templates that you want to use, or rulers. But I like this little thing. So we know the box corner, we want it to be 1 by 1. But I haven't sewn the side seam in yet. So I'm going to account for that side seam. I'm going to add another 1/2 inch. And this is 1 inch. I'm going to line that up with my seam that I've already sewn. And then I'm going to add that 1/2 inch, and I'm using a piece of painter's tape to mark my ruler. It just makes it so much easier on the eyes, and it's really quick. Let's say I have already sewn this seam in. Okay? Some patterns will have you do it like that. Not at that point, when you have both seams already sewn, they'll have you make that cut. So I would just line up, I would put a piece of tape right there on that 1 inch, or you can just line it up with your eye. See how that's square and lined up with that seam. Then I would mark that. If I haven't sewn the seam yet, like I have it here, I'm going to draw it like this so that I can cut it out. Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to go back to this. This is my boxed zipper pouch pattern, and I'm at the point where I need to mark that 1 inch boxed corner. So I haven't sewn this side seam yet, but I have this on the fold, which is just the same as it would be as a seam. So I'm going to line up that 1 inch and my 1.5 inch. I hope this is making sense. I'm going to mark that on all my corners. Then I'm going to cut this out. Now, this is the way I'm doing it for this pattern, but if you're using another one where you're going to bring, the corners together and not cut this out until you sew it. So those of you who have made it that way, you will know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, just don't worry about it, okay? So I'm going to continue to make, I'm just going to flip that over, lining up things. See how easy that is? And you'll just proceed with the instructions of the pattern. I'm going to cut that out. I really encourage you to do this, is to fill out these, because when you're cutting out, I have been known to cut things out the wrong size. All I need to do is cut out that panel piece. Simple rectangle. But if I don't know the measurements, I don't have them in front of me, I'm going to forget. So we know the finished size of the bag that I want is going to be 5.5 wide by 5 high and 2 inches deep. The outer fabric panel that I need to cut out, and I need to cut out 2 of those of the outer fabric, and that will be, we decided that it's going to be 11.5 wide by 8 inches high. Those panels were 11.5 wide by 8 inches high. But now I have that measurement. I need to cut out how many? I need to cut out 2 for the lining. That's the same size. You can just put that down in there, and the stabilizer the same size, but the zipper length I want to put in there too, so that you can refer to this again. And then you can also, I like to use a pencil so that the next time, instead of having to print it out again, I can just erase those and put in my new dimensions of the new bag that I'm making. That is really simple, right? That is so simple. But it is so confusing to keep all these numbers straight and the measurements straight, because what's wide and what's tall and whatever. But if you have a visual and you write down those numbers and you put them in, all you need is that panel measurement and the how big you want your zipper box, your box corners to be. So I hope that's helpful. I hope this will help you in your bag making, your pouch making, because you can make them any size. See all the combinations that you can make? This one has just a little teeny box corner. And my snack bags that are so fun to make, that have a really big box corner that you can sit up, check those out. Those are fun and easy to make. I hope that was helpful. Thanks so much for watching. If you like my content, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and click on that bell so you can be notified when I put new projects up. You don't want to miss out on anything. And if you want to check out my website, youmakeitsimple.com, where I have all my patterns listed there and other fun DIY projects around the house, in your sewing room, crafts, and even in the kitchen and garden. Have a wonderful day. Have fun making pouches and bags, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.